Good afternoon, everybody. Ooh, and this is good. It picks me up. Normally I have to do this because I'm tall, so that's really perfect. I'm Camilla Formica. I am the Chief Program Officer of the Cable Center and Syndeo Institute at the Cable Center. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So for 40 years, our mission has been to steward the history and the legacy of the cable, broadband, and fiber industry based out of the States. We've recently really expanded into the UK with a number of UK partners and entering into some different relationships. But we were founded by the entrepreneurs, the cable pioneers, the founder in the industry from the States, with names like John Malone. There's people's names that you would definitely recognize that founded our nonprofit organization. And we were founded really with the tenets of making sure that we stewarded that history and legacy through our programming. Our programming includes, and actually I think I have a slide, maybe? Whoops, hang on 1 second. Sorry. Well, okay, Lauren. There's Maria. There's Maria, hold on. We're just gonna keep going. There we go. So our program that we have includes a library, and it's a one-of-its-kind cable broadband, very specific library. People come from all over the world when they're writing books, when they're getting their doctorate, whatever it is. So you find it's a really interesting curated library. We have a museum and an archive as well with some really incredible things that lots of people geek out about when they go, especially our engineering friends get down there and they're lost for days. We have a theater. Our programs include things like the Cable Hall of Fame. So every year we induct 4 to 6 cable icons into our Hall of Fame. And we actually do, in our building, physically have a Hall of Fame wall that goes around the building. We have a CX, a customer experience think tank. That's global, so we have global leaders that are customer experience leaders, and for over 20 years they've come together twice a year to try to solve some of the CX problems. And I found it interesting this morning because so many things that we talked about in the morning sessions come back to that customer experience, that user experience, and how do we fix some of those places. One of the interesting things is for those of you that maybe do attend the SCTE, the American Tech Expo. We did a panel last year, we'll do another this year, and it's bridging the gap. We bring together the engineers, the construction folks, the CX leaders, and bring them together to really talk about how do we fix that piece, because a lot of it's the communication piece or the expectation piece. So what do the CX people need to understand, and then what does the engineering side need to understand as well? So we'll be doing that again this year. And then the last thing that we have is our Entrepreneurship Academy. And that was really founded from, we are an educational nonprofit in the US because our founders said, not only do we want you to steward the history and the legacy, but it's really important that you educate the next generation of leaders. What does that look like? In the beginning, for the first probably 33 years, it looked like folks like John Malone and Bill Brennan and people like that traveling around the US and traveling around the UK, speaking to groups of people as these iconic entrepreneurial founders. Well, as that sort of slowed down, what we found was the folks that are in big, large organizations wanted to have that entrepreneurial spirit. They wanted to be able to innovate. They wanted to be disruptive. But the companies knew there needed to be guardrails around what that looked like. So from that, the term entrepreneurship is actually a real term. People often come up to me and say, you said that wrong, I just wanted to make sure. So like entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship are basically cut from the same cloth. But entrepreneurship means that these folks need, or they learn how to have those skills within guardrails and inside the organization. So we teach leadership skills. We travel all over to do so. We have online classes that are actually virtual instructor-led with blended cohorts. And we have our master classes that are in person. So we've got some folks in the room that'll be helping us with the master classes that we put on here in the UK and in Europe. Last but absolutely not least, you'll see the Cable Hall of Fame date for next year is already up there. It's in New York City. We'd love to have you. And then we are, through our library, through that library that's part of our mission, creating a documentary this year. So we're working on it this year. The first chapter of the documentary will be coming out in September. We are in the midst of fundraising, so you can go to this site and you can see the sizzle reel for it, and the first chapter will be available, and then we'll be kind of creating as we go. It should be out by the end or middle of 2026 in its entirety. And we're doing it slightly different. So a lot of the things that we've done have been created around the people And in this case, it's being created on the technology. So we have started with the modem and the power of the modem and how it completely changed the industry. And then we're going from there and we'll work out into different technologies. But so it'll also be really unique because it's going to be technology driven instead of people and company driven. So with that, I'm going to sit down here. We're going to do it differently this afternoon than it went this morning. And we're really going to truly just sit and have a conversational panel. So I'm going to sit down with the ladies. They're each going to kind of tell you who they are and what they do. And it was so interesting to me because, well, two things. Gosh, Melissa is sitting over here. You'll see that Sandie had an issue that had to do with that Eurostar thing that's going on and had to get out of here. So Melissa kindly, at the break this morning at almost lunchtime, I said, so how do you feel about sitting down? She's like, great, yeah, I'd love to. So we love having Melissa with us as well, and it's going to be fun. She was looking at the questions like, I'm not exactly sure. Sure, I'll answer these. So with that, I'm going to hop over here, and I'm going to introduce Maria Brennan. So Maria Brennan is the president and CEO of WICT, which was the Women in Cable and Telecommunications. Now it's Women in Media, Tech, and Communications. And I'll let her kind of kick off what she's doing here and some fun things about her organization.
I'm here because I love London. Just with any excuse to be here. No, actually, I'm really excited to be here, particularly on your 80th birthday. You all look very good for your age. I have a really special place in my heart for technology because even though I'm kind of an old dog, I love new tricks. So AI has got me super excited, and I know a lot of what I'm going to say is preaching to the choir, but I'm going to give my perspective through that prism of an underrepresented group in technology, which is women. And I'm not going to do it from the perspective of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because particularly in the United States, where I hail from, a little small town called Washington, D.C., is where I was born. It's where I've lived all my life. I'm not going to hail from the perspective of DEI matters because women are half the population and everyone has a mother and everyone loves their daughters. I'm going to do it from the perspective of it's a really, really important business decision. It's a competitive differentiation for companies if you believe in data and research and all the different measures that tell us that it's good for business. And not just from the gender perspective, but also just from a diverse demographic perspective, right? Because if we all had the same people sitting around a table with all the same experiences, we might not innovate and problem solve as quickly as we would if we had a lot of different people sitting around the table. So that's going to be sort of my slant. And I'll go fast because I know we want to get to the panel portion of it. And plus, we just ate a big, huge lunch. I had 2 desserts. And yeah. So I do want to congratulate you on your incredible legacy. 80 years of anything is spectacular. So that is really a big deal. It tells you that you're a very relevant organization. I also want to mention that we're in such a unique time in the evolution of technology. It's just moving at the speed of light. It's just remarkably exciting. If we decide that what's happening is going to be additive to what we're doing instead of replacing what we're doing. So, whether it's in the fiber, the fixed wireless access, 10G, infrastructure, economics, all the things, this future will not be built by technology alone. And it's going to be shaped by people. And I think that's the most important sort of philosophical thing we have to think about. The principles we embed in the systems are going to be based on the people who are creating the algorithms and forwarding the technology. So, you can't talk about it without talking about AI. I'm almost sick of AI because all we're doing is talking about it. But it's the biggest thing since, I don't know, the wheel. I mean, seriously, we're living in the most bizarre time. We thought the iPhone was a big deal, right? Now it's like that's so passé. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's transforming everything so rapidly. And if we don't really manage the networks and the predictive maintenance and the content delivery and the customer experience and all of those things, then the scaling won't be possible without the people. And I know we're talking a lot about AI replacing jobs, replacing humans, and all of these things, but we have to remember that it's, again, additive to what we should be doing. It shouldn't be replacing the principles and the morals and the scruples and the things that we bring to the technology. Today, only 22% of AI professionals globally are female, and in the UK, only 15% are people of color. And again, it's not that, I'm not talking about that from a perspective of the right thing to do. I'm talking about how important it is to have a wide swath of demographic when you are serving a wide swath of consumers. You're going to find that your shareholder value goes up, your productivity increases, you problem solve quicker, and you innovate faster when your teams are not homogenous. And you don't have to believe me, I mean, I have a bias, but you should believe Harvard Business Review, the Clayman Institute, Catalyst, some of the organizations, the Anita Borg Institute. There's just so many of them, and nothing in the data is bad, y'all. Nothing. In fact, if it was saying that it should be all one thing, I'd be out of a job, which is okay. I could go find something else to do. But it's actually really good for you to have. We don't use DEI in the States anymore because we don't want anyone to feel left behind. We want diversity to mean opening the door wider, not closing it tighter. So we don't want to leave behind any one group. We just want to make sure that there's an opportunity for all groups to contribute. Because I think we'll get there faster, further, when you have a wider demographic of people. So that's sort of my message today. I can't not come from across the pond without addressing just a few little things that happened while I was, flying to London, which is just the state of international affairs. I'm no spokesperson for any of this, other than to say that I think what is happening globally is such a tremendous it's such a tremendous representation of what can happen when we lock arms and work together toward a common solution instead of finding ways to look at our differences, but instead finding ways to look at our commonalities and our common ground. So at the WIC network, I'll close with this. We have this, we don't have this slide. Sorry. We do, so, oh, there I am. That was before COVID. I was naive and much younger then. Look, I had no idea what was in store. It was like a month before, everything hit the fan. So at the WIC network, that pyramid you see there, that's what we bring to the market in terms of the continuing education. Because I can't stress enough how important it is, no matter how old this dog is, we have to always learn new tricks. So we want you to be lifelong learners. And so we give you programs for every level of your career, starting with the chapter level. We have 24 chapters, including UK, Ireland, Amsterdam, soon to be Paris, and soon to be Madrid, Latin America, and in the United States, we have about 22 domestic chapters. We do this so you all can have a network that is like this, right? You all like to get out of your office and hang out with each other. It seems like you all like each other. I've met everybody, so many of you here today, and I'm thrilled to be out of my office today. So we bring you programs all the way up to our our Stanford program at the Graduate School of Business and local chapters, everything in between. And most of our programs, they're all male and female, just so that you know. And our membership, we have 10,000 members. It's about 12% male. People are like, you let men into... I was like, we would be the last place to discriminate based on gender. That would be so not good for... Plus, it would probably be illegal. I'm not sure. So in the end, probably the most important things we do is bring educational programs to market so that individuals in technology, media, entertainment are better, stronger, faster at their job. And we also commission original research because we want to know how people are being recruited, retained, and moved throughout your organizations. And a lot of your companies participate in that. And we provide resources so you're better, stronger, faster at your job. Simply put. So I'll just end by saying thank you for inviting me to your birthday. I think it's fabulous that you've been around for 80 years. And while I won't be here for the next 80 years, I'm sure you'll still have tremendous relevancy and be doing great work. Thank you.
Lauren's like, not following that.
No, not following. So my name is Lauren Trudeau. Mark already spoke eloquently about what OpenVault does. We are a American-based company, but we do have customers throughout Europe, and I am here to represent the female voice in our organization and in organizations in America, and what we bring to the table, and hopefully you'll find that to be wonderful things. But I am the VP of Operations, running our marketing, HR, and finance department.
Thank you. Okay, your turn. You all know Melissa.
Hi everyone, and hopefully you all know who I am. I'm editor of Broadband Journal, and I also manage the staging and producing of these events. I look after the marketing and the website and the app and so on. I've been here for 4.5 years. Feels like
The mics didn't pick it up.
so yes, I think that's probably you kind of know that, right? I don't know anything to elaborate on that.
Well, and thank
there's
you.
one thing I wanted to add.
Thank you.
It does say across the pond. I am I'm Canadian, so I. So yeah, you didn't know that, but yeah. So I'm representing the other. Yeah.
I love it. Perfect. See, it worked out perfectly. So as you can tell, I think the panel is really exciting, and it's a bunch of interesting female leaders. That's what really we're going to focus on is leadership, not just females, but leadership and what it means. But what you're going to hear are some unique stories from the lady sitting next to me, who I'm fortunate enough that everyone here is also my friend. So I think I sort of loaded the deck in a way. I was like, let me just pick people that I really like and I really want to talk to. Last night, a group of us went to dinner, and Lauren's husband, Mark, was the only gentleman. And so we are all sitting around, and we're 3 or 4 cocktails in at that point, but we're all sitting around talking, and we're starting to share stories, just things of like, maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow, because this is a great story. And poor Mark just sat there, and he's like, should I leave? And we said, no, you need to sit with us, and you need to hear what we're talking about. But he said, no, this is not in any way anything. You said it most eloquently. It's about everybody. It's about high tide raising all boats, right? We want to talk about how everybody can prosper. But we definitely want to talk about kind of our experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think most of you will find some similarities, whether it's a male boss, a female boss, a coworker, whatever it is. The gender doesn't matter. It really is irrelevant. It's the stories and the leadership that comes out of it. So with that being said, I am going to start, Lauren, with you on that first question. She's like, oh God, okay. So you all come from different backgrounds, very diverse backgrounds. And can you share a pivotal moment in your journey that shaped you as the leader that you are today?
It's a pivotal moment.
Or it could be a boring moment.
Yes. Well, you know, I feel like everyone who begins their career, you are given options of which direction you can go in. And I know as a young female starting out I was in a customer call center operation in the wireless environment when wireless was just brand new and people were carrying them around in suitcases, you know, and so we're going back a while. And there weren't a lot of females, but it was such an exciting time. But what I did learn very quickly was how I would want to be a leader in the future and how I would not want to be that person. And where I'm getting at is in a customer service organization that is run 24/7, snowstorm, sleet, Christmas, all of those holidays, you need your people to agree to work some points in time that they may not want to. And I had a leader who was expecting that's the job we signed up for, but never would have, at 5 o'clock they were out. If it was the first snowflake, they were driving home. And to me, that was very pivotal in what I wanted to do when I grew up in any organization, if I could. And that was lead by example and never ask anyone to do something that I myself was not willing to do. And to me, that shaped who I wanted to become. And that is to ensure that never would I ever ask anybody to do something that I myself wouldn't get down on the ground and sweep that floor with them if that was what was necessary. So I do think that shaped me.
I love that story, and it's probably applicable to all of us, that we've seen like the good and bad that we've learned from and said, don't want to be that one, and I do want to be that one. I do want to do things like that. Do you have something that you would want to share?
I think my sort of path, I mean, it was very accidental, you know, it wasn't by design. I was raised by immigrants. I'm Greek, and my mother, you know, came over on a boat legally, I will say. And you know, she was a school teacher and had her master's degree in Greece, and but when she came here, she didn't speak any English. She didn't read or write. She couldn't drive. And she learned a lot of things very quickly, like how to smoke cigarettes. That was a big deal back then. And she actually took a job as a cashier in a grocery store, which was, you could say, beneath her, but she was really proud. And she got cashier of the year, and all 5 of us kids, my dad drove us, and we all went and saw her. And so I learned really early that my sort of guidepost was going to be my mom. And she sometimes experienced discrimination, even though we're not of color, you know, you could tell she was a foreigner. So I just thought, I think that put me on a path that said, hard work pays off, no job's too big or too small, and sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. And she ended up having an extremely successful real estate career. She did quit smoking, thank God, and she lived a long, beautiful life. So I think that was sort of the journey that I was put on. I would give a lot of credit to, we call her Yaya because she was everybody's grandmother. But yeah, that was probably a seminal moment for me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Melissa, do you have one you want to share?
It's more work related really. When I was my whole industry, I come from the film industry originally, and I'd had 10 years in 2 studios at Paramount and at Disney. And I left Paramount in 2009 to become a consultant, which is a really great idea in the middle of a recession. Really good idea. And I did find myself working at the Royal Opera House, and I saw this content being screened, like live opera and ballet being screened into cinemas for the first time. It just blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it. I was captivated by it, and that work kind of inspired me to go and find other companies doing it, like the Met Opera, who just started doing it as well, and there were some other companies. It was kind of like a little burgeoning thing of kitchen table startups, and I started to realise after about 3 or 4 years of working with these guys that what's missing is some infrastructure. It doesn't have a name, this content. It doesn't have anywhere to go and find out what's coming up in the movies, in the cinemas where you can buy tickets, and even the operators themselves didn't know. There was no release schedule, so they were quite often clashing events and stuff. So I had this light bulb moment to set up a trade association. I thought that's what this industry needs, without knowing the first thing about how to organise a trade association. I had no idea at all. And I had this idea it would be some kind of dusty, policy-led, I'll be lobbying people a bit and just doing it around the kitchen table and looking after my kids who were really little at the time. And it just grew arms and legs because it was the right time to do it, and suddenly I had people working for me, including Julie, and we were organising conferences and awards and putting trailers into cinemas, and we had kind of satellite offices, and it just became this monster. And it was quite an adventure, wasn't it, Julie? We had an amazing time, but it kind of threw me right into the deep end and something I'd never done before, because I'd been quite sort of corporate animal up to that point. So it had to sort of force me to sort of become really good at all different facets of running a business, and I was better at some than others, I admit it, and it was really tough in some ways, but it just, the people that I met, and it just forced me into a leadership position without me really thinking very hard about what that was going to look like. So I took my lead from lots of really great mentors around me who taught me an awful lot, and I think that's my pivotal moment, really.
Wow. That's big. Super interesting. Okay. Maria, I'm going to give this one to you. We'll start with you at least. So generationally, I know that you have a crew, you have a team behind you that is very diverse.
The older I get, the younger I look.
Yeah. I know that feeling. And I'm curious from you what generational shift, either team or in the industry, has most influenced the way you lead today from a leadership perspective?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I hadn't really thought about it until you and I were talking a little bit about it. It's the first time ever that this many generations is working together. You know, that we've got like 5 or 6 distinct generations working under the same roof, if you will. I think it's really hard to be, how do we say this? It's sort of like what you were saying, like we would never do anything that our team wouldn't do, but I do so much that my team wouldn't do. And I'm like, hey, when I was your age, you know, so I'm trying not to be that gal, you know. It's different. So 2 things shaped me. One was COVID, right? Like every day for 30 years, I went into an office when I wasn't traveling, 9 to 5, if not 8 to 6, you know, a half-hour lunch. But I did learn that some of the older generation, and I'll just be so transparent, I'm sure you're going to be shocked to know I'm 60, but you know, some of the, nobody gasped, and I thought that's rude. But what I learned during COVID is that the younger generation to some extent has it right. They really believe in this notion of balancing their personal lives with their work lives. Now it is a balance, right? You don't get to, you know, there's a reason work is a 4-letter word, right? Like you gotta earn your paycheck. But I think what I've become, especially now that I work with a much younger generation, most of the people at WICT are way under 40, is that we have to strike a good balance to get good young people in. Young people don't work like we worked when we were 25 or 30. I swear they don't. And I used to kind of begrudge them until COVID. And now I kind of get it. So now it's finding that balance. I never want to go back to the way it was before COVID, but I also don't want it to be COVID time. You know, so I guess it's about, as a leader, finding my happy medium and learning all the time. Learning how to adjust those guideposts. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So I think it's interesting because this morning some of the conversations were around being more diverse in the people that we bring in, how do we attract people to come in and stay? And I think what you just said is so important because we're all a little bit older and we all don't see it necessarily the same way. And so I struggle with people who are like, well, I'm done, it's 4 and I'm done and it's Friday. And that's fine, balance like that is fine. But it's interesting because I do sometimes think that the work ethic is different.
Yeah.
And so I have to wrap my brain around accepting a slightly different work ethic, and as long as things get done. I think the first time I ever heard from somebody that their company had just open vacation, that you could take anytime as much as you want, I thought that is a disaster. And in reality, most people don't take their full vacation time off. They just don't take that much. And the odd, rare person is the one that, you know, maybe takes advantage of that. So there's also something to be said about the fact that people are pretty good about policing themselves, much more so than I feel like some older generations are. So also wrapping my brain around that. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I want to.
I agree with you. We are one of those companies that have open vacation policy. It's endless. You can take it whenever you want it. However, it is done responsibly, and that's what they need to understand. You can't just sign off for 3 months and expect you're going to come back and have a job. And when given that responsibility, we have found that, just like you said, most people don't use a lot of vacation. Yeah. A lot less than I think we would have given them. So that's kind of nice. But when I look at the generational differences, at least when I started my career, I think that authority was you did what you were told. You looked up to the people that were leading this organization and you followed the rules and you did it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now I think if you want happy, and you were happy with it, very happy, at least I was. now I think you need authenticity with your employees. They are not going to do something because they're told they need to do it. I think you need to lead with honesty and authenticity and really listen. I mean, this current generation, they're all about social influencers who are sharing every detail of their life, but therefore they feel that that's what you need to do with them as well. So if you're authentic and give them the reasons, you get the buy-in and the collaboration a lot easier because they believe as well, rather than telling them.
Well, and we hear a lot about the why and you know, making sure people understand the why, but what you just said is exactly that, right? You're talking to them, but you're also explaining why it's important and why it matters, and we know from a cultural perspective and a generational perspective, why is very important to younger generations. They really need to understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. Why does it matter to our organization? How are we having an impact in the community? Those things are really much more important. And I don't think that it's that they weren't important, but really until COVID, I don't think people kind of thought it was okay to even question that stuff. It was different.
Well, I'll even glom onto that a little bit, you know, some of these job sites and the LinkedIn learning groups and some of that will tell you that the younger generation will look at they'll look at things that we never thought to look at. Of course, we didn't even have internet when I started out. But, you know, they'll look at things like, what does your board of directors makeup look like? What are your policies for work-life integration? I mean, so those are the kinds of things if you want to attract younger people, and you have to, because, you know, the Maria Brennans of the world are aging out, and you have to replace them with, you know, the new gen and the next gen. And I think it's an exciting time, but it's also challenging because the expectations are different. Yeah.
Agreed.
Melissa, did you have anything?
Yeah, you mentioned authenticity, and I think it's also, when I remember when I first started working, you were kind of expected to show just a certain side of yourself when you're in the workplace. And these days, I feel it's much, it's acceptable to say, oh yeah, I do have kids, they're at home actually, or they're at nursery. I didn't really want to admit that when I first had kids. I kept them really on the down low, and I never really admitted that I had kids or talked very much about them. It was kind of like, I remember standing up as I was about to go on maternity leave. I was talking to this woman, and she said, can you get this done by like next month? I went, well no, because I'm going on maternity leave. She went, what? I went, and I stood up. 8 months pregnant. She went, oh, well, I should get off my desk more often. And she was really surprised. Well, just goes to show, I'm not hiding that. But I think these days it's much more an open. You can be yourself in the workplace much more than you could be. I think before COVID. I think that changed a lot.
That's so true.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember before COVID, and I won't name the company, but it's a large operator in the States.
Oh, come on, tell us.
I'll just say it starts with a C, and you can just figure that one out from there. But a large, starting with a C operator, and they were on an senior executive call, and there were people that were Zooming in, maybe Skyping at that time, and someone's child made noise, ran through. There was just some disruption, and the senior leader said, no one's working from home anymore. That was disruptive on our call. Everyone saw you had a child. Oh my God, okay. But then it was no more working from home. And then COVID happened. And then we got to meet everybody's pets because the dogs are jumping in our laps, the cats are on our computer screens, our kids are running through.
And it's okay.
And it's wonderful.
Okay.
Like, to me, that was the humanization that we're all continually talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That's the humanization of what this generation needed, what happened, and kind of where we're evolving. And I think it's much better for us.
Although you know what's one phrase I'll never miss? You're on mute.
Oh God.
You're on mute. We can't hear you.
I do that far often, and I intend to, that's for sure. Okay, so next question would be, and I'm going to start with just really quickly something from my perspective, and that is that I too have been in this industry for a really long time, 36 years. And when I started, mentoring wasn't a thing. I mean, I'm guessing that mentoring maybe was something somewhere, but it was not something that people proactively and actively engaged in to make sure that women, men, anybody coming in had somebody that they could go to and talk to and learn from, and that there was sort of an organized thought process around it. And what that did was I found that for women who were leaders ahead of me, they were very possessive of the space that they owned, and they really weren't interested in reaching around and pulling me up to follow them. And men just didn't understand that that was a thing that was needed. I think they always had some levels of camaraderie, and there was things that they did. So there was this gap that it wasn't until you sort of find your space and realize how hard it was to get to that space. Male, female, doesn't matter. Now that we're working from home, it's even more incredibly important because people don't have the opportunity to connect. But for me, it was a really pivotal moment, and in my candor here is that I was a chapter president for WICT, been in WICT for a very long time in the States, and WICT changed that for me because the programs that are in place are structured, they're mentorship, there's a number of different programs, but that for me was the beginning of my career really changing because I found a network of people and I found different tools and skill sets that had never been available to me before. So that was when I really saw a huge difference in my career. And so then, number one, that's made me very actively a mentor of others. But it also has made me start to talk more like this around why it's so important to look for those places in your organizations. If you have the influence to make a change, to make the change, if you just have the influence to be the person that can grab somebody and say, let me help you, how can I help? I think we lose a ton of people because of working from home and not having that same level of interaction. And I think that's an incredibly important time to step into the concept of mentoring, whatever that looks like to you, right? It doesn't have to be a formal program. It just can be as simple as grabbing coffee with someone and being there when they need some advice. So, long way around the intro, sorry about that. One piece of advice that you give to kind of that next generation of people that you run into, Maria, I'm going to start with you because I know this is a really passionate place for you.
Well, I think it's important because, and this doesn't just apply to women, this applies to men, it applies to the seasoned generation and the newbies too. When you look at C-suite leaders and ask them what the most defining moment in their career was, they're going to cite a mentor, mentors, or a workplace sponsor. And so I think if I was going to leave you all, because you all don't look like the newbies, really. No offense.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
Some of you look, I can say that now because I'm, one of the older people in the room. But here's what I would challenge you to do. Your point is a really good one. Mentoring doesn't have to be a heavy lift, but I can tell you I've formally and informally mentored a lot of women and men. I learn more from them any day of the week than they learn from me. And it's fine to be an informal mentor of someone and just have coffee, like Camilla said. Give them career advice. If there's someone in your office or someone in your orbit that you're like, this young person has potential, try to reach out a hand to them. The other thing I'll say is I don't believe that we should have a full remote workplace unless it is absolutely necessary, like you've employed somebody on the moon and they can't get to work. But we are losing a generation of, a lot of what happens after the conference, after the meeting, is how we teach the next generation of leaders. I got my best mentoring advice and things like that by, hanging out late at work one night or whatever it is. So try to find that happy medium. We can't give the new generation just about everything they want. We do have to sort of force them into this notion of a balance. So yeah, if I was going to leave you with something, try to have a cup of coffee with someone in your office that you find has good potential and see if you can encourage them to create a path so that we're always helping the next generation.
Yeah, I will jump in there with advice that I have given to people that work for our company, and we're fortunate to have recruited some really incredible, young, enthusiastic men and women that I don't want to lose. We're a relatively smaller company, so career paths, it's not like, there's a well-defined one, but I always like to tell them, this is your opportunity to really make an impact, and the only way you're going to do that is by being, and I hate to keep using this word, but being authentic and true to your core values and bringing that culture into the workplace every single day and stepping up and really just showing up with your core values and beliefs and with your hard work ethic. And it's very, very hard for people that are working remotely to prove that they have that because nobody sees it. And the lack of connection is, it's a real tough one. You know, I think that generation that recently graduated during COVID, they just don't have the skill set of even knowing how to behave in an office environment because they don't know that you can't just open the door when a meeting's going on and you know, demand that they get attention. So it's very important to try to bring them in and help them feel connected and show them that there is a path for them if they are, you know, willing to listen and learn and collaborate with everyone that is available to them.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Yeah. Melissa, do you have anything?
Yeah, just that, like I write this piece in the journal for International Women's Day every March, and I interview 4 women. In fact, I haven't interviewed any of you, have I? You're next, but I kind of ask a bunch of questions about what they advice they like to give and experiences they've had in the workplace, and they all say the same thing, and I'm really struck by it, that find your network and exploit that network, and don't expect it to happen to you. You really need to go out and find it. And it doesn't have to be a female network necessarily, but you are right, Camilla, like, you support each other, and I think there's a lot to be said by, what's that expression about reaching down? Yeah. I think that's a more of an American expression, but it's really true, and I'm struck that all these women, every year I do it, the same thing happens, and they're all extraordinary people, but they've all said the same thing. So, build up the network.
That's
and it
great.
doesn't come that naturally to the
No.
COVID generation who are not in that.
That's
that
why it's
world.
nice for us to sort of make the overture, just to
Yes.
kind of, because it's a little daunting.
It is.
Yeah.
And like by nature, I'm a connector person, right? I'm somebody that wants to make sure that you meet you and you meet you.
You really
That's just, it is kind of what I do, right? We were talking last night, that's my superpower. It is not spreadsheets, I can tell you that. But that's a really important piece, is to sponsor, right? That means the difference between mentoring and sponsoring is mentoring is sort of like coaching. Sponsoring means that you have their voice when they're not in the room, that you have their back, that you're taking care of making sure that they're met by other people that could be important to them, that their name comes up. So I think that's an important thing too for especially younger people. I don't know which one of you said it, but there's that awkwardness because they don't, they come in the door, you was you, Lauren, they open the door and you're in a meeting and they don't really understand the etiquette of the office. My biggest thing is I love text and I use a lot of text, but there are times that you don't text certain people, right? There's times that it's, you walk into their office and you talk to them, you pick up a phone and you call them. But man, there's just this inability
Can I tell you something?
Oh, no,
That
please
we
do.
hired someone right out of college, and this is a testament to something slipping through the cracks in the education system in the United States. I can say this. This is, across the pond. This young lady had her master's degree, and she, you know what a paperclip remover looks like? You know that little
Like a
thing?
biter?
Yeah, like a biter. She was trying to staple paper. and all of us who were like, oh my gosh, do we fire her? And then a year after that we hired someone, and she didn't know where to put a stamp on a letter.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. So these are real stories, and we're just, and so I think there's something to be said about this etiquette thing. But I was like, is it our job to give them letter writing 101, or should this not be happening somewhere before we're
That's
paying
right.
them money to know this? So it's an interesting, maybe there's a program there for us to market, but it is a disconnect, and we do have to sort of, it's kind of up to us or the uni, I don't know, to give them those core skills.
I think that
There are adulting classes now.
Well, right, so in America, across the pond, that doesn't exist the same way, so there's so many really important skills that people aren't taught. I mean, they can research the heck out of with the internet, and they know how to get to places, they know how to recycle, let me tell you, things like that, they're drilled into their brain from like kindergarten.
That's true.
But to your point of that, of where the stamp goes, or the stapler's a good one, but there was a period, and you guys may not know this because it was very specific to our country, but there was a period of a handful of years where they decided to stop teaching cursive. They felt that cursive was something they didn't need. Most kids are typing anyway, so they don't need to understand how to read cursive or write cursive. Well, I grew up in a cursive generation, so everything I wrote was always in cursive, and my kids couldn't understand the notes I was leaving or the things I was writing for them for school. And it's just this huge gap. They learned, because I think it was maybe only 4 or 5 years, there was a window. But now you have a window of adults that are now in their mid-20s out in the world that cannot read or write in cursive. It sounds like a silly thing, but it's right aligned with the whole stamp and stapler. Like, how do you go into a business environment? I'm guessing everyone here writes in cursive. All of us do, at least. So it's just a really interesting thing to understand what's not known, a great place for mentorship to come in, again, back to that point, helping people understand just some of the really basic things.
Yeah.
Really, really basic. Okay, I'm gonna cut some questions out because we're running low on time. I would love to know about influence in your lives. So you're all influential. I don't want to use the word influencers because that has a whole different meaning now, but you're all influential and you influence others. Can you talk about a way that you intentionally use your platform to create impact, like beyond your organization though? Inside your organization you're already talking about. What do you do where you step outside and make an impact based on the fact that you're an influential person? Anyone can start.
Sleep.
I'll step up and say, I try my best in every interaction that I have with every individual that I come across to treat them with kindness and with a true open. Camilla always says you wear your heart on your sleeve, but I do, and that is authentically me. So I think I influence people to do the same. I'd like to believe that I encourage others to be honest and truthful and just put their best foot forward with good intentions. And I think that's what I intentionally try to do, and hopefully I do that well. I will say, today happens to be my wedding anniversary. So
thank you for spending it with us, by the way.
So I do believe that I'm spreading love here with all of you and sharing.
How many years?
29.
Oh my gosh, so you were babies when you got married.
But, that is how I try to influence people.
I love that, and I can vouch for the fact that that's really true. She really does wear her heart on her sleeve, not in a bad way, in a good way, that what you see is what you get. She's genuinely interested in talking with you, and it's a very special skill, and I'm very lucky to know you for that reason, along with others. Maria, do you have something you want to share?
I'm trying to be authentic here and not pretend that I'm always at on my best behavior. How do I do it outside? My whole job is doing that. So sometimes I'm just really quiet and not always as intentional as I should be. But we work for, I know you all we work a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes the greatest thing I can do is just recharge my battery so I can get up and do it again. Amen. I think I'm a kind of what you see is what you get girl. Sometimes I'm really proud of the interactions I have with people, and then sometimes I'm like, wow, I could have been a lot nicer to that person. So I'm going to be authentically me and say, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. Sometimes I'm really great. I will say I'm mostly great to I'm always really nice to servers in a restaurant and the taxi driver.
That's important.
Learn all about their home, but yeah, sometimes I'm a little introverted. I admit it. And then
not
you're like, Americans are never introverted. Up here I'm not, but sometimes I just need to go chill out somewhere.
You got to recharge to be ready to do this again.
I know, it's true. It is true.
Miss Melissa?
I had got a work answer in my head ready for this because having come from the film industry, this is quite a leap for me, and I'm not a very technical person, you all know that, but I kind of try to use that to an advantage and make what I do when I interview people, when I talk to them, I kind of want to make it accessible. That's my sort of if I can understand it and I can write it in an accessible way, then we might be able to get beyond this room. Whether I don't think you even realise how much you know, all of you, and you've forgotten more than I'll ever know. It is amazing. So if I can make it accessible, that's kind of how I think. That's how I consider influence, and I can kind of spread the word that way and make it so that if you pick up Broadband Journal in a dentist's office, you understand a little bit of it, then I've done my job well. That's in terms of influence, I suppose.
That's great. If you can make those technical things simple to understand, or simpler to at least understand.
Well, I gloss over the really technical stuff.
What was it? No, wait, Melissa. So Melissa won an award this weekend for, what was the award, please?
Best paper, best presentation.
Best paper, but you gave the example of what was it making sexy? Something was sexy.
Oh, that was semiconductors.
Was it making semiconductors sexy? I think that was like the title of it, and I thought, all right, if she can make semiconductors.
Semiconductors is a love story.
A love story. Sorry, I went to a sexy, but a love story. But if that can happen, I mean, you can sort of
That's
make anything.
cute. I like that.
Semiconductors, a love story. So, tell me what you think, because you're all women that are shaping the future of the industry. You're all involved in the day-to-day and with hands-on. I'm curious if you have a prediction or a hope, and we do this panel, we've done this panel a number of times, not these same ladies, but we're kind of a rotating panel with this conversation. And I had a really interesting comment, and I'm kind of curious if anybody is going to say it, and if you don't, I will, so there's no pressure. But, what would be your prediction or your hope for where we'd be 5 years from now?
Wow.
And if you're okay.
So where we'll be 5 years from now? I'd like to see us talk a lot less about. I'd like to see us talk a lot less about how many women, how many people of color, how many this, how many that, and just really be, right? Because it's just like we don't need to count. We're just like feeling very okay about the way we've been able to spread the industry around so that there are a lot of voices represented. Meritocracy for sure, but that would be one thing. And then on a selfish note, I better be retired. Fun because I got things to. We just built a house in Florida, so that means I do want to see the industry evolve in a way, especially because AI is changing everything, and it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. I would like to see the industry make up for those losses in human power with new ways to keep the industry very much employed and very much innovating. We can't suppress what's happening, but we always have to have a human component to what we're doing, because that's what we are,
Yeah. Before we move on, just 1 second, would you mind talking about, there's something called the PAR report, what WIC does, and I would love for you to share that, because that really aligns with what you were just talking about.
Yeah, I left some cards out here, and there's a QR code that you can use to go onto our website and look up some things. The reason we go into industries, 77% of the industry workforce is represented by this PAR report that we commission, and we do it through PwC. It's a third-party audit firm that does it, and we go in and we count people in the industry. We count the jobs that they have.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
That's okay. And where they, how they're recruited, retained, and moved throughout the industry. So we know at any given moment how many, white males are inside the sales and marketing department in the industry collectively. We don't know individually what happens. No one would take the survey if we knew that. But it's a good thing to know, because that enables us to see not only where we stand in terms of measurement, but it's also giving us the ability to tell companies who participate in the survey ways that they can create courses of correction or courses to try to help them diversify their teams. And I'm not talking about diversity, I'm talking about diversity of experience, diversity of backgrounds, the sorts of things that you need in order to have a more holistic view of your company and a holistic view of the industry. The Annenberg Center used to do this through UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, but they stopped doing it. So we do it now, and It's underwritten by NCTA Education Foundation, and it's a very powerful tool. It helps companies individually and collectively make sure that their demographic is representative of not just all voices, but really all experiences. Yeah. So it's a big give back to the industry.
It's wonderful, and it aligns with what you just said, which is,
Yeah.
can we get to a point where we don't have to worry about those conversations because we can see the data.
Yeah.
The data shows that it's happening.
And I
the
should
diversity
say,
is
it's
there.
moving in the right direction. It really is, so that's a good thing. Yeah.
That's great. Did either of you have something you wanted to?
I was just gonna say that when I thought of that question, and of course you know AI is coming and here and taking over and all of that. But my hope would be that in 5 years, that those skills that have long been considered soft skills, empathy, communication, human connection, are escalated to the point where they're not just valued, but I think absolutely necessary for us to exist and innovate, because a machine can't do that. So it's that human connection and the ability to be empathetic with one another and really to connect. And I hope that in 5 years, that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
More of that.
That's a really good
That is a
point.
good one.
I was just going to echo what you said, really. The same thing about just it. I don't. Much as I think this is a good thing, I was having a conversation at lunch earlier about this is a good thing that we're doing a women's panel, but also I don't wish we didn't have to do it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'd like to think in 5 years' time we don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And there are just women all over the place, and we're all talking about it as experts in our field as opposed to what gender we are.
Yeah.
And that's what was said in the panel when we were at ANGO, was it'd be really nice if we didn't have to have a women's panel, if women were represented on every panel. That would be a real step in the right direction. And then I was talking with Julie today, I think break or lunch or sometime, and we were talking about the disproportionate number of gentlemen to women in engineering school, her daughter's in school.
Yeah.
And just how hard it is to kind of stand up and have your voice heard when it is, 9 to 1 or 10 to 1 or more. It's hard to bubble up enough to the top. That's another place, going back to the idea of mentorship or finding someone that you think has a lot of potential, helping them move up, because it is hard. Just statistically, it's hard. Look around the room. We're here because we're speakers. I'm not sure we'd be sitting in this room with you, and the room would even look more different. So I think that's a really incredible piece to think about, and I would love to see it to where it's just a panel. You don't need to hear about women's opinions. I'm sure you get enough of those at home. So we're down to just the last couple minutes, Julie, so I'm going to ask a couple of sort of quick lightning round questions. So one word to describe your leadership style.
I know what your word's gonna be.
I know what your word. Maybe, Lauren, do you want to start so that way that, it gives us
Authentic.
Authenticity.
I think that's good.
I love it, and very true. Melissa, do you have one?
Boss is right there.
Is that a word? Probably, I guess, quite relaxed, I suppose.
Relaxed.
I think I am.
Look at the time.
I would say, it's like I would have immediately said direct maybe 10 years ago. Now I'm going to say a little more empathetic.
Oh, I like that.
I think I'm a little more of an empathetic leader in my waning years. I act like I'm 80. I know I'm 20, but I was always very direct leader, and I think now I just adapt a little more. I'm more empathetic.
That's
I'm
great.
going to go with empathetic.
That's
Yeah.
right. We're actually going to stop it there and open for questions because we're at the hour. Thank you guys. You were all so wonderfully attentive. So thank you for paying attention and smiling at us. And really quickly, thank you to this incredible group of ladies that are here, but our wonderful panelists.
Oh, thanks.
So hit us with questions if you have them.
Look at that brave gent.
Been wanting to ask this for a while. We've seen around the world, larger numbers of people who are, shall we say, not inclusive. And politicians telling them it's okay to not feel inclusive. So what happens when your inclusivity starts to bring together people who just don't get it and don't think they have to get it? What do you do then?
Oh, that feels like a you question, Maria.
Well, you know, the most powerful tool, well, first of all, that's a great question, and thanks for asking it. And that happens a lot, especially now.
I know it's gone really badly wrong
yeah,
when
yeah.
someone says that's a great question, thank you for answering.
No, it is, especially, you know, coming from across the pond where, you know, we don't use DEI as a term of art anymore. We use impact and inclusion and
You go around bombing.
yeah, I know what you mean. It's all code. We actually, I don't make it about, you know, like God and mother and country. I make it about the data. The data is really a very powerful tool when you want to show the business benefits of having a wide swath of demographics in your organization. Top, middle, bottom. It's just all about the data, and we have it all over our website. So I just point to that, you know. And we put a statement on our landing page that went through several layers of lawyers and lobbyists and everything else, although I made it look like it was just very much my thoughts. And it was to a great degree, but it had to be scrubbed. You know, the most important thing to remember is that a DEI hire was never intended to be hiring somebody who is a woman or a person of color who is not as qualified as another candidate. And that's where I think we have fault. I'm not going to, you know, we needed to make that clear in our journey to be inclusive. That meant everybody, you know. So I think that's what I would point to is the data that says so, and also the data that says that we don't want to leave anyone behind. We just want to pull everybody forward alongside us. Yeah. But
And I would add to that something that you said specifically in the question around people that come in and they're almost disruptive in their lack of desire to get along with everybody. And I do think that, especially in organizations like WICT, where it is very, I mean, everyone is that way. Everyone is kind of marching to the same concepts and ideas and passions. Those people self-select out when they can't, and I'm not talking about working for a business organization. This is obviously, you know,
Well, that's kind of the problem, because they are selecting themselves.
Yeah.
You're kind of losing
Yeah.
that grounding with, frankly, an alarming proportion of the population.
right.
Yeah.
Because they don't get and they don't support what you do. So you become basically some kind of woke elite sitting on the
That's
edge.
another word that's a
Yeah.
bad word now.
Well, I just say that to annoy you.
Yeah.
to be honest.
Exactly. Well, I think that's such a great point, because I like to say we'll get further faster if we're all on the same, you know, on the same train, on the same team. The trouble is sometimes you can put all the facts in the world in front of somebody, and as you know, it's a mindset, right? They don't have a growth mindset. They have a closed mindset. So you kind of have to lose those people and try instead to evangelize and change the thought process of those who are independent, right? Like, and it's not an easy thing to do, but I can tell you that the most successful companies, the higher shareholder value, they return more shareholder value, are the ones who have strong inclusionary makeups. They're, you know, bar none. I mean,
As long as they align with the tariffs.
yeah. Yes. Well, there is that too. But I will say that, you know, there's so much good data out there that if you decide to turn your back on it, then you run a risk of having a lower, statistically your chances are lower that you're going to be as profitable, and you're going to have a higher quit rate, and you're going to have a little bit of trouble nowadays with the newer generation of recruiting.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you get to make a choice. That's the good news. And if you don't believe in it, you might want to think about faking it, because there is a case to be said for, you know, just following the data.
I was going to ask you that question as well. So not necessarily faking it, but are you seeing now that some of the language is changing to not feel like it's creating camps, but just to feel like, you've said it a bunch of times,
Oh.
everyone is welcome in the tent. We help everyone. Do you feel like that that's taking away some of that? Well, why are men not invited? Or why can you not do this? Do you feel like it's taking away a little of that argument versus people coming in going, this organization sucks?
Well, they don't say that to me. They say it behind my back. I will say, like, and I want to know what you all think about that. Like, I don't know that. I know we've had to change our nomenclature quite significantly. If you had DEI statements or diversity and inclusion or impact inclusion, whatever we're calling it, within your organizations, have you had to change your like language or go onto your website and scrub things up a little bit?
We haven't, I mean, we had to add it initially,
Yeah.
because that just wasn't something that you
Yeah.
needed to do.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like it's all about the culture of your organization and what you attract that culture. And I'm not saying it's the same mindset, for goodness sakes. I would say our company is very diverse in opinions and in race and color, but in opinions for sure, both politically and economic, you know, all of those issues. In a very small organization, we've got them all. But the culture is one where, number one, it's not really discussed in the workplace. And number two, that, you know, when you're in America, and I'm coming from, you know, New York City area, it's in your face everywhere you go. And it's really not as divisive as you may believe it is. It's really not. I go to the gym, I go to the grocery store, I live in a high skyscraper, so I am living and spending time with all sorts of people. And it's truly not what you believe it to be. It's much more loving and civilized than it is made out to be. And I'm talking New York City, Jersey City, a large place that you may believe is, you know, people so mad and burning each other up, and that's truly not happening. Maybe it's depicted that way in certain, you know, media, but I don't find that to be my experience at all in the workplace or in my home environment in a very large city. Very isolated.
I think you're actually advantaged in a larger city. I think it's a little, maybe a little bit more of a geographical, you know, a little more hidden. But it could be, you would think too. You could make the argument on the other side too. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. It's not like we're going out there in battle gear every day.
I'm sure it's perceived that way at this point. That's what I'm sure.
No. Oh my gosh, no. I can tell you back in the day, it was so much worse. So all these things that we're doing, you know, and the fact that you have women who are CEOs, I mean, those were really the outliers. I mean, that was now, I mean, still pretty, you know, you could still count them in, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs and on, you know, maybe 2 hands, maybe 3 hands now. But back then it was like, I don't know, there were like 2, 10, 20 years ago. So there is progress being made, and I think measurement matters. What gets measured gets done. And I also think that, you know, if we're a meritocracy, you're going to have naturally a wide swath of individuals representing your organizations, because naturally everybody is, you know, there's no one brain that's better than another. Anatomically, we know that for sure. We do know guys can be stronger. Not all guys. We will give you that. But yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. It's not a battlefield. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No?
Good.
Yes.
All right. I've spent a lot of time kind of back and forth on the Atlantic. We have a mixed kind of American-British family. I have a daughter. My question was more about, and I'm going to join WIC. I've kind of been one of the people that's come young. As a man, should I do it?
Absolutely.
I guess I should just do it.
In this room.
I guess I should just do it. But my question is kind of more like international, like, do the different cultures and pressures of work for women differ between the U.S. and Europe? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I think it's a little different, especially certainly with maternity benefits and certain things that are different in Europe. So what's your take on it?
there are vast
Maybe
differences.
starting with Melissa, because she's the only real European on the panel. Even though she's revealed she's Canadian today. Who knew that?
Today. Well, I don't have the perspective of having worked in the US really to compare it to, but it seems, and in the time that 17 years since I had my daughter, it's got a lot better, I think. Maternity and paternity benefits are much better here.
I don't know what they are in Canada. It varies by company, right? It's not. It's not a mandate.
Don't you have government mandated maternity here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, here you've got it's
And
6 months, 12
I
months,
took 8 months
something big.
paid.
Yeah.
It could have taken a year, but I got back after 8 months. So, but I think it's better now.
I think we might still be 6 or 8 weeks in a lot of places in the States.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's not it's not required. The Congress doesn't even give their senators, women senators, maternity leave, and no maternity leave. You have to take vacation.
So Melissa, the story you told in the beginning, you would have had to give birth at your desk, and then just come back the next day to do the project shooting.
Yeah.
That would have been.
No, you just get unpaid leave in a lot of companies, yeah, which is hard to believe. It's hard to imagine. And then even other European countries are much more generous than the UK. A lot more generous. I mean, you could. I would say that your daughter who lives here is in a good place because right now in the States it's just a little bit, bigger fish have been getting fried right now, so we've got a little bit of a different focus, right? But right now it is a mandate. DEI is there's an executive order against DEI programs, and it's public information that Comcast, I think President Trump calls them Concast now, and some of these other companies are very much being investigated for leaving behind overrepresented demographics. So, so I think that will affect hiring and decisions. You've had companies like, is anyone here with Accenture? You've had, okay, then I'll tell you.
You remember me telling you it's being recorded? Just remember that.
Well, I will tell you, it's public information that Accenture removed its DEI policies because it wanted to be, I would say that they were wanting to be more inclusive. So it's a very interesting moment in time. I think you just have to that's why the 5-year question for me is significant. I'd rather be thinking about bigger things than counting crows. That's bigger things like how can AI solve medical issues? How can we get internet to everybody and the sorts of things that we should be thinking about.
I would add to that too, that in the beginning of my career when my kids were young, I can remember taking my kids to work with me, tucking them under the desk with a blanket and a pillow so that they didn't make any noise, but I could be there with them. I mean, that was the state of where we were. Post-COVID, we're able to work from home. People are so much more open that I'll say even in the States, because I realize that some of the things we're talking about feel really dire, but even in the States, I mean, the work-life balance has changed so drastically that it doesn't feel oppressive. Now, I don't have young children anymore, so maybe it still does, but it does not have that same, Melissa said it, I don't want people to know I have children, right? Like I take them in, hide them under my desk, and that's where they sleep so I know they're okay. But we're not there anymore. At least I don't know of any organizations that are still like that. There may be some out there, but
well, we do have a law in the United States. No woman who leaves on maternity leave can have her job removed. They could not pay her,
Right.
but she has to come back to her job or an equivalent job. But there are a ton of laws around that, like they have in some of the Scandinavian countries and some other European spots. That's not the case in the United States. That being said, most companies, especially the big ones and the good ones and the smart ones, do it because they're not going to get, in the United States, 57% of the undergraduate degrees are earned by women. 53% of the graduate degrees, including PhDs, are earned by women now. So if you want to recruit an educated crop of talent in these states, at least, you're going to want to recruit women. So it's again, it's not about, we all have daughters, and I have 2 of them, so I can relate, or mothers or sisters or aunties. It's because it's a really smart business decision not to leave half the population behind. Yeah.
Sarah, you had a question?
Hi,
Hi.
yeah.
We've got two.
Go for it, Sarah.
Oh, sorry.
You decide between you, bit, right?
I think I'd want. You're all really,
There's a strong woman for you, right there.
thank you, Amy. You're all very successful and leaders, and thank you for being here talking to us. I just wanted to ask if you could identify one leadership quality you would really like to see more of in our future leaders, what would you say?
I'll start with communication. The ability to communicate, which includes listening. Most people communicate to speak versus to understand. And I think that that's a huge miss for us with a lot of leadership, is that there's this lack of kind of closed loop listening and talking. It's a need, and I think that people don't understand how poor they are at it. I think a lot of people think they're amazing communicators, but they stop listening the second the other person is talking, and so therefore the narrative is already sort of preset in their mind. You don't walk away learning anything, you don't walk away better as a leader, and if you're not doing that, you're not growing, you're not learning, you're not moving into that role the way you should.
I would say, I would like to see, and I'm going to use this word innovative, not necessarily technology-wise, but to kind of break your feelings of where you're a leader who can understand and move with the times and really appreciate the differences that people are bringing to the table in a collaborative environment. I think, someone who is willing to collaborate and be innovative and hear all the voices in the room, I think that would be, the best type of leader.
I was going to say, there's a certain narrative that historically that women have been held back by men, and it's a man's world and all of that. And yes, of course, there's some truth in that, but I think also probably as a result of that, we're actually quite good at holding ourselves back and not putting ourselves forward and having belief in ourselves and thinking, well, I could never do that. And I've heard myself say it, and I'm sure we've all said it as women. I don't think men have that. They're not hardwired that way.
Well, there's an interesting statistic. Tell me if this is true, because we have a few men in the audience. So statistically, I think it was Harvard Business Review told us that if a man looks at a job description and he matches 50% of the criteria, he's like, I'm going for it, this job was made for me, I'm gonna get it. A woman wants to match 90 to 100% of the listed job description in order to even consider going for the role. Would you say that that's true of men? If you see it, read it, and you go, oh, I can do half of this stuff.
Having spent quite a long time looking for jobs, because I was made redundant in the dot-com bust,
Oh yeah.
then all you need to do is look at it and think, how rare is that? How likely am I going to be better than the next guy? Yeah, that could be down to 20%.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting though? It's a mindset, right? And so it's to your point. Like sometimes we become our own worst enemy because we hold ourselves back. Yeah,
that's really true.
Yeah.
I will say though, we did have an interesting dinner last night, and someone outside of the industry who happens to be a psychologist, joined us. And she
not because we needed it.
No,
she was a friend of someone's. This was not like, oh, I should sit with
it
those
wasn't a
people.
therapy session, although. And she practices both here in London and in Paris. And what I found, one of the most interesting things she said all night was that she has very many high-level, extremely successful men from London who travel to Paris to see her, because number one, they don't want to admit that they need to speak to someone here in the UK. They go to Paris, so they're anonymous. But she said she's surprised at how many strong, powerful leaders that are men and have achieved overwhelming success, however you define that, are so unhappy. And she felt that it was the lack of being able to be empathetic and authentic, and their fear of being real. And I think that is the superpower that women bring to the table. But truthfully, it's not a female trait. We all have it. It's a human trait.
Great point.
And we all need to embrace that. And I think we'd all be a lot happier.
In
It's
fact,
probably just fear of being found out for only being 50% of what.
but the other thing is, a lot of companies now have paternity leave, and a lot of men don't take it. So it's to your point, is like there is a stigma, just like women have a stigma of, not having certain things or being certain ways, that men have to have a certain, like reputational thing, right? So
I've been surprised to hear from men how many have, I'm assuming everyone here's heard the term imposter syndrome, but I mean, it's something women talk about all the time. I mean, we're super, we'll sit in a group like this and talk for hours. Men have admitted it, and I'm always surprised because we always just thought it was kind of exclusive to our territory.
Yeah.
But men are like, oh God, no, we just don't talk about it. We never talk about these things in public. But to your point about what she said last night, I think it's just super interesting to realize that it's out there, and how unhealthy is it to not be talking about it at all, to not feel like you can have someone that you talk to about those things. I mean, these guys that she didn't give names or anything. She said, I mean, they don't talk to their spouses. They don't want anyone to understand that they are kind of faking it or just trying to get by. That's terrible.
that would be tough. I wouldn't like that.
Yeah, but that's because we're not wired that much.
Yeah. That would be hard.
Was there another question? Oh.
Hi, thanks very much for your perspective today. It's been really enjoyable to listen to you. So I'm a father to a 17-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. They were both very much into sort of STEM type interests.
Good.
Both got diverse characteristics about them as well. My observation is that I think it's too late at the university stage to try and attract people to our industry.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be doing that at an earlier age.
Yes.
We need more, to address the balance, we need more people in at the start of the funnel, rather than trying to differentiate between them at the recruitment stage. But the question I have is, I see a crunch where people don't move, there's not enough career mobility. How do you as an organisation at, say, WICT, encourage organisations to create opportunities to bring new people in and succession planning, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's another one of those really thoughtful questions. They're all thoughtful questions, but here's what we know, and I'm going to give you statistics from the States because I don't think Europe measures as much as we do. It's systemic. It's like you said. By the time we get them, the odds are stacked against you as employers. You're not going to get a lot of women applying for your engineering jobs because it's single digit. When I gave you the statistics of all the women in undergrad, that is grotesquely lower when you're looking at the STEM fields, especially engineering and technology. Math, not as much. What am I missing? Science, technology. Science, not as much. Science and math, it's okay, still not great for women. We know in the United States, and it's in math class, boys are called on 4 times more than girls, and we get this from Anita Borg Institute. So it really is a problem. And it's not because boys are more outgoing, it's because we have a bias, women, men in the classroom, of calling on boys when it comes to STEM fields. And it's just because of how they were raised or how they grew up. So we have to address it at a much earlier age. We partner with the Anita Borg Institute, Girls Who Code, Black Girls Who Code, and Girls Inc. to try to use our influence in our events to affect that. We do an okay job with it, but it really has to start at a local level. It has to be grassroots. You have to get more involved because if they're not applying for STEM fields in college, they're not going to graduate with a STEM degree and they're not going to come into your organizations. It's too late by the time we get our hands on them. So I don't have the answer for you, but I think the answer lies within your communities.
I've worked with an awful lot of women who have come in as an engineer who, the stories I tend to hear are, I'm so passionate about it. I'm so passionate about it, and I loved it as a child. And maybe it was from a parent. A parent taught them some things that just triggered this passion and excitement. Then I went to school and it got harder because my voice got smaller and smaller and I was listened to less and less. Then I went into this work environment where I'm the only female in a room full of 18 engineers. They don't think I have anything valuable to contribute, so instead I have to like stand up and put my arms down just to be heard. And they're like, it's exhausting and I don't want to do it anymore. And so we have these really bright women that are engineers, that's been their passion since childhood, that leave the industry altogether. They may not be engineers or anything, they may go teach, they may do completely other things because it's been such a bad experience for them.
I hate to say this, but that's why a lot of parents look at not a co-ed environment in the grade school and high school level, because you can't call on boys 4 times more if it's all girls in the classroom. So it's something to consider, although I hate the idea of that. Now, one thing we do as an organization is we help train women leaders in STEM so that when they are the only voice in the room, they know how to show up big, they know how to command a presence, they know how to not be on the back burner, and they are sometimes the ones who are asked to go get the coffee for the rest of the guys. It's true. I mean, I know you guys aren't those guys, but there are some out there. So we do train them how to be a stronger leader when they are in our industry, and that's our partnership with SCTE in the U.S. And certainly we'd love to be able to do more of that at the UK and international level as well.
Just to elaborate on what you said, what you were talking about, awareness definitely has to start within the community, but I'd even take it further and say it starts in the home with the toys that we're giving our girls, with, when they have homework, oh, go ask your dad. Or no, let me do it too. Your mom isn't just there for the watercolors, and it goes so much further than just even primary education.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you all know about Goldie Blocks and things like that? So there are now the toys specific for girls who, little ones, and who that encourage engineering and things like that. And even Lincoln Logs, everything helps. So I think your point's really well made. It starts really young, yeah. Unfortunately, by the time we get them, all we can do now is train them how to be better leaders in a STEM field, but we can't get them into a STEM field. Yeah. Did you want to say something? I think you have some very interesting thoughts. Come on, tell us.
No, it's just that as a chartered engineer, I've just had so many men try to tell me that you should go home and have babies. My reply was, find a man that can do the job as well as me.
Well, there you go.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm owners of the SCTE.
Oh my gosh!
No, you're
So
not.
glad on that one.
Oh, be quiet. You're just. I don't believe you.
Were there any other questions?
You look like such an honest woman.
Were there any other questions? Well, thank you all. Thank you for
That's a good way. That's a good note to end it on.
That is a wonderful way to end it.